Hi, I'm Yinka, and this is The Hurt Locker, a podcast where we open a door into men's mental health. Coming up, you've got a knack of drawing people in.
I think we're experts at disguise, really, Yinka.
We're going to talk about your OCD.
My earliest memory was when I was 7 years of age.
And somatically, you feel it as well.
It was all-consuming. It was 24/7.
How did you manage it yourself? You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. We have a special guest tonight. I'm going to say his name, and people may not know his name, but certainly when you see his face, you'll know who it is. It's Ian Puleston-Davies. Ian, welcome to The Hurt Locker.
It's an honor to be on it, Yinka.
When Tim told us that you agreed, he said somebody from Corrie's going to be on it. And I was like, who could it be? Who could it be? Who could it be? And when you come on it, I kind of gushed. I'll be honest about it. Why did I gush? Because you have a presence about you. That's me particularly. You have a presence about you on the small and the large screen, whereby it's welcoming for people. This is me anyway. It's really welcoming for people. It's, how can I best describe it? And it's not meant as an insult. It's like you welcome people in, and then you see the other side of you as well, and you do it so adeptly. You know?
Right, I'll take that.
The plant that was coming to mind was a Venus flytrap. That's what it was. That's what came.
Great. I love that analogy.
You know?
I'll take that, certainly. Yeah.
That's what comes to mind. How are you anyway?
I'm really well, thanks, pal. Yeah, really well. The sun helps. I think it does generally for all of us, doesn't it? And I certainly think that when we do have our issues, I think having the sun out and having a warm breeze on your face can actually improve your day. So I've had a really good day today. Thanks.
Cool. And what's in the pipeline for you work-wise?
I've been an actor now, Yinka, for about 45 years. And I felt it was time to kind of dip my toe in the water for other things. So in the last few years, I've moved into writing and directing as well as the acting. So the acting is at the moment still the day job. But I have started writing and directing, and it seems to be going well. I'd like to be paid a little bit more, but I suppose I'm first rung of the ladder of a new career. A little late in the day, I have to say, but there's no time like the present. So
there's no time like the present, indeed.
So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm shooting another short. I finished one earlier this year, and I'm shooting another one in about a month's time, whilst I'm also appearing in a new TV drama. So I'm kind of spinning plates at the moment.
Okay, but it's nice to be busy though, isn't it?
It's been a change because the last few years it's been a bit of a rough ride, actually. It's been a tough time, actually, which lends itself to having a conversation about mental health. I've only had a couple of jobs in the last 3 years. So as well as all the other stuff going in my head, we've also had to deal with trying to pay bills, as have so many of us. So I'm a victim of the cost of living. There you go.
Cost of living. It impacts us all, and I'm glad you said that, because I think there's a perception, there's a notion that if you're on TV, if you're on television, then you must be rolling in money and all of that. But no, that's not the case.
It's unless you're the lucky or the extremely talented, 2-3%. The majority of us live a life of feast or famine.
Yes.
And the feasts are very short-lived, and the famine have a very scary longevity. And I always wonder why. I went to drama school in London many years ago, and I always wonder why they don't teach that side of your career, which is unemployment. We have no clue idea at all when we leave drama school that there's going to be chunks of our career when we're waiting for the next job. And that's something that should be addressed.
It's funny you say that, because I think they say that any one time, 90% of actors, actresses are unemployed.
Yeah.
And how do you reconcile that mentally when I don't know, you're in the Aldi, you're in Sainsbury's, you're in Waitrose, wherever shopping. People have seen you on the screen, and
Yeah,
then, but
yeah,
internally, you're
yeah.
thinking, "When's my next job coming? I'm waiting for the agent to give me a phone call."
I think we're experts at disguise, really. You know, Yinka. We're very good at concealing our our financial misery, and I make no bones about it. I know, and I respect their their wishes to not talk about it. But I have no embarrassment or no shame when I'm out of work and out of pocket, because I know most of us, certainly in the industry I'm in, a lot of the time are that way inclined. So you know, and I think in a way, you know, it's funny because I do it because I don't like to fib, but I also do it because for exactly the reason you've said. When you do get people who come up to you and maybe are going through a tough time financially, and they hear that that bloke from the telly is in exactly the same position, I do believe that I hope they walk away thinking not better of themselves, but that you know it can touch and affect any one of us. And I think there's comfort there. I
Yep,
would hope
yep.
so.
I agree with you there. There's an appreciation that I'm not alone.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not alone.
yeah. Exactly. Safety in numbers, you know. So I have no bones in telling people, "Oh, I'm broke at the moment. I haven't worked for you know this number of months." I have no problem in sharing that with people because, of course, there's no shame. There shouldn't be. We've got enough to be dealing with anyway without feeling shame.
Absolutely. And, you know, tell me a little bit about your background growing
Yeah,
up. You're a northerner. I know you grew up Wales, Flintshire, yeah? Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I'm presupposing here that politically wise, you can tell me I'm wrong, but politically wise, there was a socialist upbringing and ideal there.
Well, funnily enough, no.
Tell
I
me if
mean,
good, good,
yeah,
good.
no,
I'm happy to be.
no. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because I come from a farming background,
Okay.
and I grew up on a farm in the 70s. And it's funny, a neighbor of ours in Flintshire was our local Labour MP, a wonderful, wonderful man. He was the Welsh secretary at one point, called Barry Jones. And I always remember whenever my dad passed him in the car or indeed on the tractor, he'd always stop and say hello. And I always remember thinking, what a fine older man he was. But at the time, and I knew little about politics, most farmers were, I suppose, they were conservative because they imagined that the unions weren't helping them, and they felt that the conservative government was the choice to be made as a farmer. But I had that inkling that Barry Jones was the right and the conservative opponent was not. I just felt he was on the right side. And that inkling stayed with me for the rest of my life. So, yes, of course, now I'm very much, me and my partner Sue are staunch socialists.
What do you take with Burnham being prime minister now? Is there a level of muted optimism?
Yeah, it's not even. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think he's a much better replacement than the previous one. Who in fact, both me and my partner cancelled our membership
No.
with the previous government because we've done our bit. You know, I do my knocking on doors and canvassing. You know, being a Z-list celebrity, there are times, certainly during elections, when I am asked to go to a local town to help, you know, raise the profile, if you like, for our Labour politicians. So I've done a little bit, and I've talked. In fact, I once talked in Leeds, stood on the podium following Miliband, and spoke in favour of the NHS. So you know, there's a little red flag that I've always waved, and I'm very passionate. Having said that, I've stopped holding my breath, to be honest. I'm a passionate supporter of Palestine. And
Yeah.
I don't see Burnham making too many choices in favor of the Palestinian issue. So I don't know. What little I'm learning day by day is not giving me great hope for the future. But he in no way can be worse than the previous one.
I would like to say some nice words for Keir Starmer, but I find it difficult too. I
He's
really do.
betrayed every one of us.
Yeah. And I always thought that, because of his background as a lawyer, etc., I thought he'd be brilliant in Question Time, Wednesday, at the box and that. And it was just like a wet lettuce or a yogurt, as you might say, So
Yeah. No,
I
I
think,
I I was never a fan of his, and I think it's baffling to think that he came from such a distinguished career uh,
yes,
to not have the voice that he should have promised.
yes, I
So there you
concur
go.
with you.
That's where we
Concur.
stand.
So you're the son of a farmer. Were you an only child or?
No, I have an older sister.
Okay. And what's your relationship like with her?
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, where she's very much the older sister.
Okay.
With
Okay.
all that
I'm
goes with it.
reading between the lines on that
Yeah,
one. Okay.
very much the older sister, has spent a lifetime concerned about my, I won't say reckless, but free living, free will. I have a lot of free will, and I think that can be handy in the profession I've taken. It's quite haphazard, my lifestyle. I should have been a farmer because the farm was in the family for 3 generations. So my great grandfather farmed it, my grandfather, my father. So as you know, farms get handed down to the next
Absolutely.
generation. But
Absolutely.
I had no interest. I loved living on a farm, and it was the best playground as a child. But and I obviously loved the animals, but I had no interest at all. And I was pretty grey, really. I was an average sportsman. I was average academically. I didn't do very well, and I was a lousy farmer. So I didn't have many choices. But then one day, this teacher joined, and I discovered he was a drama teacher. I didn't even know what that was. I thought drama was a row your mum and dad had at night. I had no idea what drama was. But he happened to be this wonderful, wonderful. It's a shame if a pupil never has that one inspirational teacher. And I
Absolutely.
think we that do, and I always think of Ian Wright, when he talks about that wonderful mentor he had when he was in school. And I think he's the perfect example of a pupil succeeding in life through their mentoring. And I was one of those lucky pupils who had this incredibly inspirational man, not just teacher, but man.
What was it that he had? What was the essence of him that he brought that
Yeah.
made you look forward to being in his class?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it wasn't, I think him being a drama teacher was secondary to his character and his personality. And it sounds very cliche, but he talked to you. He talked to you. It wasn't just teacher pupil. He talked to you as a person other than a pupil.
So
And
you were on the level?
yeah, I mean, there was an engagement there that I really was drawn to. And then of course I found out he taught this subject. I suppose if he'd have been I don't know, a geography teacher, I may have gone into something to do with geography, but he happened to be a drama teacher. So I just wanted to be him. I always remember very quickly, you clearly remember when we were kids, and come rain or shine, we'd always be kicked out, wouldn't we, in the breaks, no matter
Yes.
what the weather was like. And if
Miserable.
you're
Yes.
and if you're lucky, you'd huddle over a little old-fashioned radiator for warmth.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if
Yes.
you got found out, you'd be kicked out straight away. Well, I always remember this one particular cold, wet, windy November day when this grown-up was walking down the corridor. None of us recognized him. And as he came up to us, we all stiffened, expecting any second to be kicked out. And he just walked by and went, "All right, lads." And we were all agog that he didn't kick us out. And I asked later who he was, and it was indeed Chris Nichols, the drama teacher. And I just remember thinking, wow, no one's ever treated us like that before. And very quickly added to that, I remember he was the only teacher in school that wore flares. He had his purple flares and long hair. And to me, he looked like a rock star, you know. And I remember thinking, watching him go down the corridor, thinking, I don't know what you do, mate, but I want to do what you do. And there we are 45 years later, or a bit longer now, 50, because that was when I was a young 13-year-old pupil. I'm doing exactly that.
You went down to London to study, to be, should I say a thespian? A thespian.
Yeah, I'll have that. Thespian.
Okay. What was it about London? Why didn't you stay up north to do it? What was the attraction of London?
I think this was late 70s, Yinka. So it was kind of a given that if you wanted to be a professional actor, you headed for London. There were exceptions. There was a very good drama school in Glasgow and one in Cardiff, actually, and a few others, Birmingham as well. But London, very much like, oh God, who's the guy with the pole and that goes to London to seek fame and fortune?
Dick Whittington.
Dick Whittington.
But you're testing me now, aren't you?
Yeah, well done. You saved me.
Yes.
They're very much like Dick Whittington. Okay. Everyone kind of headed for London because that's where you hoped the stones were paved in gold or whatever, the pavements, whatever. So you did at the time believe that was where you needed to get your training. So I went to a drama school in London called the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. And here was I, this farmer's lad with not just wet behind the ears, probably cow manure behind the ears, heading off to London, not having a clue what was ahead of me. But that was, to this day, one of the most exciting periods of my life.
Go on, tell me more about it then, because I'm getting the sense that you're a bit of, you're quite adventurous.
Yes.
You're quite adventurous.
Well, compared to the little boy or the 17-year-old that I'd left behind, I did kind of embrace London life straight away. And it was the joy because I was suddenly surrounded by like-minded people who had come from all over the world, and we all had one thing in common, and that was our love and our passion for acting. And so we were, it was for me, it was my own holy grail because I was, I knew that I'd made the right choice with the right people. And we just threw ourselves into this city life, Soho, nightclubs, bars, and of course, cinema and college. And just as every student does, my daughter's going back to her second year in Newcastle, and she's living the life, the dream as well, and I don't think I was any wilder, than anyone else. But, it was the time we'd left home. Yes. And we were able to just explore and be wild and carefree. And it was an absolute great time of my life.
How were your parents towards you about going down to London? And did they ever say, you've changed?
Well, no, they didn't. But funnily enough, Inga, my mates did. I always remember being horrified when I went home for at the end of the first term. And I'd only been in London 3 months, and I went to my local pub in Flint called the Swan, and they all obviously started accusing me of being posh.
Of course.
And they said, because just for you to give you an idea of what Flint is like, you don't come from Flint, Yinky, you're off Flint.
Okay.
You're off Flint, and it's a very colourful town, shall we say. Flint folk have a great sense of humour, but they don't suffer fools. I went all Scouts then. They don't suffer fools. So it didn't take long for me to be ribbed to pieces when they thought that I'd gone all posh on them. So you did change. I was with posh people. Not all of them. There were some Northerners, there were some Scousers, there were some Welsh. But you were in drama school at a time when a dialect or a regional accent was frowned upon. It was that long ago when if you had an accent, it wasn't considered in your favor. And we would have to go to elocution classes, and it wasn't knocked out of you, but it was gently squeezed out of you, if you like. And of course, nowadays, I'm sure I'm right in thinking that that's not the case. You know, every regional person I know wears their accent as a badge of honor. But
Absolutely.
in my day, it wasn't considered the right voice to have if you wanted to be an actor, or should I say, an actor.
An actor, indeed. And what has your sister made of your career?
My
In the,
sister,
yeah, what's he made of it?
do you
What
know
did
what?
it?
I mean, I've been so lucky. And she's successful in her own right. I mean, she didn't go into the farming industry, the farming business either. She married outside of the farming community and became a very successful. First of all, she worked at the BBC in London,
Okay.
and then she moved to BBC Cardiff, and then up to Manchester BBC, and spent some years there before becoming a researcher, and then ended up being a lecturer at our local Wrexham University and being head of a department. So she's done pretty damn well
Superb.
herself. But I'm the only one in my immediate family who pursued a career in the entertainment industry. So that was, for that reason alone, I was I won't say, oh gosh, how best without sounding ridiculous. I won't say it was exotic, but it was different because no one was an actor in
Yeah.
my farming family, and they've all embraced it and have been so lovely and supportive and proud of me. It's one of the nicest things I can say about my family is their support for me. My mum and dad, I know that a lot of farmers, in fact, my father wanted at a time to go to the RAF, but he couldn't. He wasn't allowed to. He had to be a farmer. So I was very lucky in that I had a father and a mother who encouraged me rather than discouraged me. So I was very lucky.
You were blessed.
I
You were
was blessed.
certainly you were certainly blessed there. I'm just thinking now, in terms of the numerous roles that I've seen you on. Corrie, you were on Corrie for
Yeah,
quite a while,
yeah,
you
5 years.
know, 5 years, and that was for me, that was a great I'd seen you before, but seeing
Okay,
how you changed,
okay.
it was like, yeah, you've got a knack of drawing people in.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, it's I find that an incredibly flattering thing to say.
No, seriously, you've got this knack of drawing people in,
That's great.
and people are like that. They think, should I trust him? Should I trust him? Should I trust him? And it's like, before you realize, damn, you're
Yeah,
ensnared.
it's very observant of you, actually, Yinka, because I play, as you know, I play a lot of baddies. I've kind of cornered the market in serial killers and psychopaths, but I love being typecast because I do think they're the most interesting parts.
But that's interesting you should say that, because I was going to ask you, do you worry about being typecast? But I kind of feel that it's multidimensional,
Yeah,
multifaceted, the roles that
yeah.
and the characters that you bring,
No, exactly that.
so
Yeah,
it's not just like 2D.
yeah,
Oh yeah, Ian's
yeah,
gonna play this character, he's a bad guy,
yeah,
he'll turn in the end and all that. No, it's a lot more than that. And somatically you feel it as well. You
yeah.
feel the turn, the change, but that's just me. That's
No,
just
I think
me.
you're right, and I think there are layers with the characters I play, which I've found fascinating over the years. I always, when I try and describe, when people ask me how do I approach, the bad guy,
Yes.
I always start off from thinking, well, he doesn't think he's a bad guy, and whenever I play that nasty role, I don't think I'm nasty. I don't think I'm bad. I don't think I've done anything wrong, because a lot of bad people, they don't do it because they're bad. It's not cloak and dagger.
Yes.
They think they're doing right. So I always come from that place of hard done by, if you like,
Yeah.
that done
There's a
me.
justification for why
Yeah.
you're behaving this way. Yes.
Yeah. So rightly or wrongly, I always start from that. Well, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. And if I if I stab him in the back, well, he deserved to be stabbed in the back, Your Honor. So I think that's probably why you've picked up on, and it is lovely to hear you say this, but that's probably why you've picked up on the idea that initially you think I'm a good guy, and then things turn, circumstances turn. Well, that's because I do play him as a good guy. And then the narrative of the character and the storyline will take me to darker places.
Yes.
You know, I don't start with a gun or a dagger in my hand.
No.
I start with a handshake and a smile.
And it's the smile. The smile is so welcoming. You know, it's
So that's my approach. And it sounds very technical, but it's not. But you know, I don't go into a room or down a street or engage in a relationship wanting to harm or whatever. It just, the tide turns, circumstances change, and then it brings out something deep within. And of course, thank God, most of us don't have that deep within, but there are some really nice people. Some of us are leaders. They all say, don't they, that every leader has that innate psychopath inside them. So that's what I enjoy in talking about layers. That's where I enjoy revealing, like an onion, if you like. If you peel back, eventually you'll get some kind of darkness in them, and that's where I eventually peel away and find the darkness, which is why I, you know, sometimes I'm either handy with my fists or, you know, or with a gun.
You've done loads and loads of roles, too many to mention all at once, but I'd like to say you had the 5-year stint on Corrie. Did you enjoy Brookside?
Yeah. I mean, the halcyon days. I mean, you know, we all grew up on Brookside, and I know you'll remember as well. You know, those first 6 months of that soap, they were such a breath of fresh air, and suddenly, you know, you felt that it was like the early days of Coronation Street in the 60s. You know, it was a slice of real life.
Yes.
And Coronation Street never intended to be this weekly entertainment. In a way, it was gritty. It was very real life. And I'm not knocking it now, because, you know, it's what the audience wants. They want something different. But the early days, I can barely remember the 60s, but you remember it being almost a documentary style. It was very real. And the worst thing that could happen was a row between Elsie Tanner and Ina Sharples, my partner. And that was the drama of the episode. And I remember Brookside having that same realism. And those characters were so recognizable and identifiable. And I just relished the idea that I was going to be in it. I was meant to stay in it for a lot longer than I think it was in one episode, but it didn't happen, which is a shame. But it was a thrill to be on the Brookside Close.
I think when we look at Brookside, and we're looking at the city as ours as well now, is there a danger that northern areas, Scouse areas, become cliched and stereotyped?
Yeah,
and the rest of the country thinks this is the way Scousers are. Brookies is a representation, a microcosm of how Liverpool is and all that, or is there a bit of tongue-in-cheek and all of that?
Well, regardless of whether there's tongue-in-cheek, that's not the point. The fact is that it is very much a cliche, and I would love to write a drama in Liverpool that has nothing to do with violence and gang warfare, because, as you know, Yinka, there's so much fun and joy. I mean, it's our favorite city. Me and my partner and my 2 kids, we try and get there every weekend. And in fact, my partner's mother, who's from Croydon, London, when my partner took her to Liverpool a couple of years ago, I kid you not, at the end of the day, she had a little weep because she couldn't believe how nice the people were. And I know Southerners and the like think, oh, that is just a cliche and that's just a myth. It's not. And she was absolutely, you know, a wonderful example of the effect that being in Liverpool for a day has. It can affect you. There's so much joy. There's so much love. There's so much friendship. And I'm a little biased because I'm only half an hour from Liverpool. And we, as kids, you know, Yinka, we always looked towards Liverpool. We didn't look towards Wales. I hate to say, because, you know, when I was growing up, you had male voice choirs and sheep and Max Boys. And as great as they were, you were more attracted by
I hear you.
the clubs, the comedians, obviously the music. So we were, because where I come from, Yinka, we're kind of, we have a huge identity crisis. We're not really Welsh.
No.
And we're not really Liverpoolian. We're known as Welsh Scousers or
Welsh Scousers. Flashy Scousers.
But a bit of a hybrid. But as kids, you know, we either wore blue or wore red, and we're very much into our music. So my memories of Liverpool are shining memories. They're not of gang warfare, of which obviously I know there are, but you do think, don't you, when you see so many dramas that come out of Liverpool and the Northwest, that so many of them do have an anger and an aggression and a violence. But within that, you've got the Liver Birds.
You've got the Liver Birds, you've got Matthew Street, you got the Beatles. Though I can't abide the Beatles, but anyway.
I wrote it very quickly, and I'm indulging now, forgive me, but I wrote a film a couple of years ago called Boland's Shoes, and it was about two Mark Boland fans. And I had them go to Liverpool for the day because they were in children's homes in Liverpool when they were growing up. And I have them revisiting Liverpool. And it's kind of my salute to Liverpool, really, because there's a time in the middle of the film where they go back to Liverpool, as I say, within the story, and they have a day out in Liverpool. And that's kind of my taking my hat off to Liverpool. So I've got a lot of love. Going through the Mersey Tunnel and coming up the other side for me was like Christmas every time.
Yeah. And you know what? For your partner's mum to come to Liverpool and shed a little tear.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I love that. Because it changes perception of what people think Liverpool's about.
Yeah.
You know, and what they're not about.
Yeah.
Ian, you know what? It's been good talking to you. But let's just quickly dive into your Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
And we're going to talk about your OCD.
Yeah.
And can you begin how you first recognized?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it as brief as I can. My earliest memory was when I was 7 years of age, and I was playing football with my mates during the break. And at the end of the break, we were gathering our jumpers. You know, we used to use our jumpers as
goalposts and all of that, yes.
Whilst we were grabbing our goalposts, one of the lads said, "Hey, who's this?" and started enacting this ridiculous thing. At the time, I couldn't work out what he was doing. He was just doing something silly with his trousers. And all the other lads started giggling in a kind of guilty way, apart from me, and I didn't know what was going on. And then my best mate, I always remember my best mate, Gary Rothwell, said, "Leave it out, stop it," to this lad who was doing this thing. And I said, "Leave what out? What's going on?" And this lad said, "That's you. That's what you do every time you get the football, you check your flies." And I went, "No, I don't." He said, "Yes, you do. You look stupid. Every time you get the football, and that's why you keep losing the ball, because you keep checking your flies." And that was the first moment I realized I was different to everyone else. And then I went home and I thought, why would I do that? And I realized pretty soon that it was my fear of all the other lads looking at me and my fear of having my flies undone. And that really bothered me because I thought, well, no one else does it. Why am I doing it? And that had a huge emotional impact on that boy of 7. And in fact, they did a documentary. I did a documentary for the OCD about me living with you know, when I first discovered it, very much like you've asked. And the producer took me back to my middle school in Flint. And we had me watching these kids playing football while I was telling the interviewer this experience I had. And it was a huge moment in my life when I realized, oh, I remember thinking, I hope this doesn't get worse. Little did I know that it was a beginning of a lifetime of struggle and hardship, of having a condition that can completely consume your everyday and can destroy it. I mean, I was one of the lucky ones, Yinka. I was able mostly to succeed in life and in relationships and consequently family. But there are people out there whose lives are totally destroyed by OCD. And that is why I come on podcasts like The Hurt Locker, why I am often, mental health week, mental health day, rather. I'm occasionally asked to go and sit on a sofa, and I will scream it from the rooftops. Everyone needs to know about this debilitating condition. And it's not just, we hear people say, oh, I've got a little bit of OCD. And you wouldn't say, oh, I've got a little bit of depression, or I've got a little bit of schizophrenia. We're kind of a poorer relation because it's not deemed as so bad. It can be joked about. And my role as a Z-list celebrity is to get that message across, that it destroys people's lives. And I'll footnote that by saying, I know for a fact that people would rather not be around than live with their OCD.
Ian, I'm going to ask you directly, at its worst, did you ever contemplate suicide?
No.
Can I ask why not?
I don't know, Yinka. I really don't know. I remember, I will tell you, at my worst, I remember being in that very dark place, being convinced that there was no hope of recovery. I wasn't working as an actor. I wasn't functioning, not just in relationships, that was a joke, but I wasn't functioning in life. It was all consuming. It was 24/7. And I was going crazy. And I couldn't even shake it off when I was asleep because I dream OCD. So I'd have OCD in my sleep, and I'd wake up straight away and kick into dreadful OCDs. It would take me an hour to get out of bed for fear that I'd break my neck if I lifted my head off too quickly off the pillow. I'd break my back if I lifted my back too quickly off the mattress. It was a catalogue of one thing after another. Every facet of my living, breathing life was not controlled, but attacked by OCD. I couldn't even breathe without having an OCD about my breathing. Have I breathed in too deeply? Have I breathed out too deeply? I couldn't scratch my face in fear I'd broke the skin. It was, when I say all encompassing, it was every moment of every day was taken up with these unwanted thoughts, which I couldn't control. And this, if you remember, or maybe you don't, but the 90s, they call the 90s the decade of the brain because they suddenly had instruments that could measure pathways and synapses. But when I got diagnosed, I'd had it already for 30 years. So I'd gone through all that time not having a clue what it was. And I went to, eventually, my doctor recommended I go and see a therapist. And, it was all for my depression. It was, it was all to do with depression. But I remember stopping halfway through one session and say, I wonder whether we could put the depression on hold for half an hour, because there's something I believe is causing my depression and I don't know what it is. And she said, well, to describe it. And I said, well, I've got it down to three things. I said, it's either early dementia. This is when I was 35. Early dementia, I've got an aneurysm or a blood clot or a tumor, or I'm just going crazy. They're the only three things I could think of to explain what this symptom was. And she didn't know, interestingly enough. She was the therapist and she didn't know. And she said, I'll have to get back to you on this. And she rang me that evening, actually. She'd spoken to a colleague of hers. And she said, I've just spoken to someone who thinks they know what it is. And it's called OCD. I didn't have a clue what that was. And she recommended I went to someone in Harley Street. And I always remember thinking, I can't afford Harley Street because that's where
Yeah.
the doctors are.
Yeah.
But I thought if ever money is worthwhile paying, it's now. And I remember
No.
paying £135. I remember
Wow.
clearly, which is a week's worth of food and going out and everything in those days. And I thought, no, this will be worth it. And within 10 minutes of sitting in this room with this posh psychiatrist, I always remember he before he told me what it was, Yinka, he pushed over a box of tissues, which he had. And I remember thinking, that's a bit odd because I'm not sniffing and I'm not blowing my nose. I haven't got a cold. And then a few minutes later, he said, you got this thing called OCD. And I said, what's that? He said, obsessive compulsive disorder. And I said, you mean I'm not going crazy or dying or suffering dementia? He said, no. And I said, well, I thought I was the only one that had it. He said, oh, no, it's a lot of people have it. And there are people out there who are even worse than you. And of course, I broke down and grabbed the tissues. And I broke down for two reasons, Jink. I broke down because I was so relieved it wasn't just me. Equally, I broke down because I was so angry that it had taken me all these years to be told by one person what I had. No teachers knew about it. No doctors knew about it. Most therapists didn't know about it. And that's another reason why I scream it from the rooftops, because everyone, certainly teachers at school, should see the signs. I was on my own suffering with this illness and I didn't know what it was. So it was obviously a huge moment, but it was a relief, but also there was a lot of anger there. And then I slowly tried to get better, but it's tough.
Just loads of questions you've opened up for me there. But just on that point of the teachers should be able to see the signs, how can they be educated? What do they need to be looking out for? What's the questions that they need to be asking?
That's great. That's great. You've asked that. There are signs. There are early signs for a child suffering from OCD or, interestingly, Tourette's. And I don't know whether you've managed to catch up with that wonderful film, I Swear.
I haven't watched it yet. You know the furore from the BAFTA awards and all stuff like that. But that's a separate issue altogether. But
absolutely. But I mean, the two are often linked, and I have physical tics. I tic, and they're very, very, very closely related. And interestingly enough, like Tourette's and symptoms of OCD, they can appear when in your childhood. And in the film, I Swear, the lad is teased at his desk for shouting out and twitching. And the teacher, obviously, this is in the 80s, I think, didn't know what was happening. And that was a clear example of the ignorance that goes in education. And I think if I'd have had, or rather if my teachers had had knowledge of this 7-year-old who was doing odd things, they may have been able to get help. And I think every teacher should be made aware. I don't know if that means a booklet or a session with an expert or what. You'd hope that most teachers are aware of OCD now, but you'd be surprised.
It's interesting you say that, because I would imagine if somebody's got tics or shouting out, etc., that at least, the very least, the teacher would be curious.
Yeah.
At least curious to try and understand why is this student behaving this way.
Yeah. And more than that, what's more worrying, Yinka, is that it's known as the secretive disorder, OCD, because when you're young, certainly when you're young, and even when I was an adult until I came out as an OCD sufferer, you're ashamed of it. You're doing odd behavior. It's odd behavior. It's not socially acceptable behavior. And you're embarrassed about it. You're ashamed about it. So you cover it up. You become experts at disguise. So the
Absolutely.
tricky thing is, if you're a pupil of 13 and you're riddled with OCD and you have all these unwanted thoughts racing around your head and it's making you very unhappy, a lot of the time, these children will be too embarrassed or too ashamed to tell their friends, certainly their teacher, but even their family in some cases. My parents and my sister had no clue what I was going through because I was embarrassed. So that's a huge hurdle to jump over, really, because a tick is a tick and you can see it. But OCD is
Yes.
all about intrusive thoughts,
Yes.
unwanted thoughts. It's all going on inside. So it's difficult to spot it, really.
Working on the set of Coronation Street, being aware of your OCD, how were they supportive of you? How did you manage it yourself?
Yes, again, another lovely question, Yink, and I'm always happy to share this. It was at a time when I'd already come out, if you like.
Okay.
So I'd co-written a drama called Dirty Filthy Love, and I'd
Okay.
co-written it with a wonderful writer called Jeff Pope, who writes all these real, these reenactment dramas. What they're called, factual dramas. So
Yes.
dramas that are based on real events. And we co-wrote this program. In fact, you can still watch it. It's on ITV now. It's on. You
Okay.
can catch up, and it's loosely based on my life as an OCD sufferer. So by the time I had I'd sat on all the sofas and done all the newspaper interviews, people within the industry knew that I was the face of OCD, if you like. So by the time I'd arrived at Corrie, everyone pretty knew that, that was my cross to bear. And it was great. It made acting so much easier because up until Dirty Filthy Love was made, I'd have to go on set, try and remember my lines, whilst after dealing with all the crisis that I thought was going on in my head, the stain on the floor, everything that I've dipped into in the last hour, I had to try and control while I'm acting. Whereas when I was in Coronation Street, I would occasionally say, can we just hang on 1 minute? I've just got to clear my head or just take a little time out. And they were all incredibly supportive and patient. And whenever my biggest fear was going in the Rovers, because obviously the whole point of going to the Rovers is to have a drink. Now I have an issue with picking up a glass that I haven't examined. So
Yes.
I have to forensically examine them for stains, chips, or things like that. So the actors would always come up to me before a take and present the glass to me and say, look, it's been washed, it's been dried, there's no chips, and I'd be able to examine it, carefully. So they were incredibly supportive and helpful. And my only regret is that I didn't come clean many, many years previously. And I wish I hadn't have been so ashamed of it.
But as you said, we can be enveloped with that shame, that embarrassment that we can't tell anybody about it. We don't wish to be found out.
Exactly.
So that's why it's hidden away. But once you shine the spotlight on it, the load becomes less then.
That's it, mate. That is exactly it. There's been some wonderful campaigns, as you know, in recent years on television, and really impactful commercials about male suicide. And as you know, the common phrase now is talk, share, and God, not a moment too soon. Hey,
what would you say for young sufferers of OCD or anybody else, parents of children who may be OCD at this moment in time but don't know?
Yeah,
they haven't come out, they haven't outed themselves, as it were. What piece of advice would you offer them?
I would say, if you're the parents of a sufferer, have a very careful, gentle conversation with them. If they're not ready or prepared or want to talk about it, then you handle it, you handle it so carefully. You can't force it out of them. They will tell you when they're ready to, but when they are ready to, then you must listen, and with them, not without them, but with them, decide the best course of action. there are some, I mean, God, if I'd have been, you know, if all that's around now, information wise, if it had been around when I was a kid, I'd have been helped so much more than I was. I have nothing. I remember very quickly, I remember picking up my mum's Woman's Own. Do you remember Woman's Own?
Yes.
It was a
Yes.
weekend magazine.
Yes.
And for some reason, I must have been about 9. And I remember turning to the back page, to the problem page. There was always a problem page, wasn't there? And there was one letter someone had, God, was it Marjorie Proops?
Marjorie Proops was one lady. I remember Marge. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, there's a blast from the past. And I think
That's
it was
one for the teenagers.
Yeah. and a mum, a housewife, if you want, had written in saying to whoever the agony aunt was, I wonder if you could help me. I'm having trouble at the moment. I'm very low. I'm very depressed. I can't stop washing my hands until they bleed. And that was like a signal from outer space to me.
Yes.
There was suddenly another being on this planet who did exactly what I did. And it was the equivalent. That's the best metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, that I could say. It was, I finally got a signal that there was someone else out there. And that was the only clue or hint I had that I wasn't alone. And like with any and every mental illness, there is such loneliness. It's quite possibly the worst part of it is the loneliness.
I know the tone changed when we started talking about this, you know, and it's that heavy heart that I'm having, that for 30 odd years you went without that support.
Yeah.
Without anybody just saying, Ian, I've got you here. This is what you're dealing with, you know? And it just raises a bigger question. And this is part and parcel of the reasons why we do the Hurt Locker, is that we don't take mental health seriously. And how we support people. It's shocking. You know, you've known people, or you will have known or come across heard stories of people who died because of OCD as well. And that should never have been the case.
No. I have a very dear friend, Yinka, who is suffering quite badly at the moment. And I know he won't mind me sharing his story, but a couple of years ago, he did take an overdose. He survived it, luckily, but there have been times I was introduced to him by a mutual friend who said, you know, he needs a rope throwing to him, and I don't know how to throw that rope. Can you help? He is suffering from OCD, and I, you know, because I've talked about it at length and whatever. I've been in. He's a new friend. He's a brand new friend. I've only known him just over a year, but we've become very close. And I'm hearing all about his story now. And my goodness, he was only telling me the other day that there was a time when he didn't leave his flat for 9 months.
Wow.
And ballooned and just ate junk food and was did try to take his life because of OCD. It's you know, the polarity between someone saying I've got a little bit of OCD to someone taking their life is you can't compare it to anything else. It's so treated so frivolous. I even have a toy. I went to a joke shop in Camden where I used to live a few years ago, and there was an Action Man doll, you know, the Action Man behind plastic, and he was called the OCD Man, and he had wet wipes and soap, and he was called, I've got it, whenever I give talks, I bring it along with me to make people realize that it's still misunderstood and not taken seriously. And he is an action doll, but he's called the OCD Man. So, you know, there's still a long way to go. I'm happy to say, and this is a long-winded answer to your question, what should a parent or a child do? Thank God there is enough help out there immediately on the other end of a phone or an email or even a text to get help. There are some wonderful books specifically for children with OCD, which are done with little cartoons and a very gentle approach to information and help and advice and guidance. But other than that, doctors now are well equipped to dealing and recognizing symptoms straight away. So there's a lot out there, thank goodness.
Excellent. How's it been being on the Hurt Locker?
It's just been brilliant. I wish I'd have had you 30 years ago and shared it with you.
It's been humbling from me.
You know, it's funny, Yankee. It's the one, because how can I put this? Because I stayed quiet from the age of 7 to 35, I'm making up for that lost time.
Good. So here's the question then. Are you living your fullest life?
Yes, I am. But I have to be honest, we could leave this podcast and it all be rose tinted and lights at the end of tunnels and everything else. But it's, I'm medicated, quite heavily medicated, and I still have bad days. I still have bad days and good days, but the good days are more often now. But for any of your viewers, your listeners out there who have struggled or are still struggling, just talk to someone, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. And there is so much help out there. I can't tell you. And if I hadn't have asked for that help, I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Absolutely. Quick question: relationships.
Well, there you go. That's another podcast for another time.
Another podcast, because I know that's a. How have you navigated that?
Dreadfully. I think Sue, who I'm with now, it's quite funny, and it's one of her favorite stories. When she first met me, which is 23 years ago now, 24 years ago, it was at a party in Brighton, at a mutual friend's party in Brighton, and she'd heard about this mutual friend having a mate who had OCD, and she thought, God, that sounds really interesting. That sounds so exciting. So she met me at this party and she asked me all these questions about OCD, and she remembers going away going, gosh, that's so interesting. I kind of fancy him because he has OCD. 23 years later, she's saying, if only I fucking knew then what I know now. So it's been tough. It's been tough for her for all the time. She's stuck by me, and she's the first partner I've had that ever stuck by me. All the others, understandably, just ran away. It's not easy living with an OCD sufferer. Like with any mental illness, we're difficult people to live with. But if you're lucky like I am, you find someone that will stick by you through thick or thin. But it's been a struggle. It has been a struggle.
I'll acknowledge that. But you've certainly clearly brought something to the party as well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Come on. It's got to be a balance of yin and yang, doesn't it?
I hope so. I suppose if she was asked that question, I suppose she'd say I do bring positivity into the room. I am quite positive, very positive, and yeah, that's it. I just think, I appreciate a sunny day. I think, I'm quite good at appreciating the smallest things in life, because, God help us if we didn't have them.
100%. A couple of listeners' questions here. Can we talk about the character Phil Wiley? Several brilliant scenes in Alan Partridge, and I did before coming on, Tim had sent me one anyway. But anyway, how did Phil Wiley come about anyway?
All right. Do you know, it's funny, outside of Coronation Street, I get recognized more for that one episode than anything else I've ever done. One episode, all I did was draw a cock on his back, and I still get recognized. It's extraordinary. I mean, I auditioned for it like I kind of knew Steve Coogan socially. You know,
Okay.
we liked to party back in the
Okay.
day.
Back in the day.
So back in the day in Manchester and in London. So I knew him, but that wasn't a shoe-in at all. I had to audition, and I got the part, and I spent a week working with Steve and the rest of the team. What I didn't know, Yinka, was it's all improvised. It's not scripted. And we spent the first 4 days improvising. So Steve and Amando, the director, would throw ideas at you, and me and Steve would have to improvise around those ideas. And then by day 4, the script supervisor would then type them all up, type all your dialogue as you went along, and then present you with the written script on the Friday morning, which you had to learn during the day, and then record it in the evening. So it was all kind of written by us, scripted, and then learnt for the night. And we did it in front of a live studio audience. It was terrifying.
But brilliant at the same time. Somebody asked, are you able to buy an apple turnover from petrol stations? Hotter than the sun.
To this day, every time I get a McDonald's apple pie, I have a little moment remembering that quote. And of course, hotter than the sun, and the other famous quote, "Back of the net," have now become and now is it called emojis?
Memes.
Memes.
Memes. Yes.
I know the back of the net is now a meme. So I've made it.
No. I think even with that section there when you're in the petrol station, that impending doom it's just there. It's just got that balance so right. It's brilliant.
It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. While I'm with you now, Yinka, it's important for me to add, I'm very lucky that I got involved with a men's mental health charity in Liverpool called Sean's Place.
Sean's Place. And that's with Debbie as well, isn't it?
With the wonderful,
yes,
beautiful person that is Debbie.
Yes.
And I'm proud to say that I'm one of the patrons along with my friend Terry Dwyer. So I do get involved, but I mean, you know about it clearly.
Yes. And Tim just put in the chat, degrees of separation again, because we've had other people who are connected with that as well. So
the few times I've been there, my heart explodes. The men and the boys there are just beautiful, beautiful people. And, you know, and most of them carry tragic stories. And they, along with Debbie and the team, are my local heroes. They really are. It's a wonderful place to go if you need help.
Props to you. And you know what? I do ask that question. Last year, 7,147 people were recorded as dying by suicide. And I think, and it's the highest ever, the figures. And I think about all the work that I'm aware of, not just locally across Liverpool, the Northwest, etc., but up in Newcastle, in Scotland, down south as well. And I'm thinking, if we just stood still and not did anything, those numbers would be even higher. And it's like, you've got to do so much more.
Well, then that gives me an opportunity to take my hat off, if I had one, to you both, because as podcasts go, this has to be one of the most valuable. So thank you for taking the time and setting this up, because you are so fucking needed. You are so needed. So thank you on behalf of every person who suffers from mental health. You know, you're doing an extraordinary job. So well done, you both.
Thank you. We've loved every minute of it. So thank you. One last question.
Yes.
One last question.
Yeah.
You're going to close this laptop. You're going to sit down with the missus and that. You're going to snuggle up and all that. There's a knock at the door. You go to the door, you open it, and it's 13-year-old Ian at the front door.
Oh, wow.
What do you say to him?
I would give him a hug, and I'd say, I hear you want to be an actor. Stick in there, kid. You will live your dream. You will become that actor, and you will learn to live with this condition. You will learn to live with this condition. It's going to be fucking hard, but you will beat it. It will not stop you from doing what you want to do. So just, stick in there, kid.
Ian, Puleston-Davies, I'd like to say you've been a breath of fresh air, but you've been much, much more than that, It's been humbling for me personally. Thank you so much.
Oh,
And thank you for bringing the time out. Thank you for taking the time out to sit with us.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for asking. I'm so glad you asked me to be on it.
We're so glad you accepted as well.
Brilliant. Okay, then.
Thank you.
Now then, how the fuck do I get out of this?
And that's a wrap. The Hurt Locker is a safe space for our guests to openly share their mental health experiences. If you have been affected by any of the content in this recording, then please reach out for support. If it is an emergency, dial 999. If you would like to talk to somebody today, then please call the Samaritans on 116 123. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hurt Locker. Please give us a rating or share with another listener. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Hurt Locker Pod.